Hi, everybody. I'm Shaheen Samavati from Vera Content and the Content Mix, and I'm excited to be here with Daniel Catalan, a global career consultant based in Portugal and serving clients around the world. Daniel, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Shaheen. It's a pleasure to be here.
So Dan and I actually go way back, and we've collaborated on a lot of projects over the years. He previously lived in Madrid and was an early member and supporter of the Content Mix community. For those who don't know, the Content Mix started out as a Facebook group for sharing opportunities in content creation and marketing. Initially, it was focused on Spain, but over the years, we've kind of expanded our focus, and now we have members from all across Europe. And it's evolved to become this professional resource with we're on a variety of different platforms. Now we have a blog. We also host networking events, which are virtual at the moment, and we have one coming up on the 11th of November, so make sure to stay tuned for that. And we also host a daily podcast with content experts across Europe. So yeah, just wanted to give you a little background on the Content Mix for those who don't know. On this Q&A today, we're going to be taking questions from the listeners. So please put your questions in the comments as we go along. But we'll also have a bit of a conversation between me and Dan. So to get started, Dan, can you just tell us a bit more about your own career trajectory and how you became a career consultant?
Yes, the SparkNotes version of this thing was that, like many of my peers in Madrid, where I lived before, I was an English teacher. And when I was giving private lessons to adults, often they would ask for me to help with their resume. So this was something that at the first time I did it was in 2012 when a private lesson student just wanted help brushing up their resume. But I've always been a writer and I've always been an interviewer and I have always created content. So I received my master's degree in global communications in Paris after 4 years of teaching. And in my first internship, I gained a lot of more editing skills. And this whole thing evolved after having a lot of experiences where I was not satisfied with my, with my own career growth. So I just wanted to fast track it for other people and for myself. And I interview people to write about their resumes, which is the combination of all of my experiences. That's how I got into it. There was one moment where I realized this was a perfect storm of things because everyone wants help with their resume, not just non-native English speakers.
Cool. So you've kind of got, are able to answer people's questions from different perspectives, having been someone who's been a job seeker and also who's in the content creation space, and you've worked in communications and marketing, and now you're consulting others in their careers. And then I'm also happy to chime in with my perspectives and feedback, being also someone who hires content creators at Vera Content. And of course, I've done my fair share of job seeking in the past as well. So so looking forward to hearing from everyone their questions. We are going to open it up to your questions. So please put your questions in the comments. But yeah, I think it's a really interesting topic right now. Obviously, we're in a very strange job market, and I'm sure, lots of people, are facing layoffs and cutbacks in the industry. So, yeah, I think it's a really relevant time right now to talk about job seeking and how to stand out. So maybe just to get started, Dan, you could just give us a few of your tips on, I guess, where you think opportunities are right now in content and how people can stand out.
Yes, jobs and essentially you have to look at it as in what is stable. Any product, usually like a software or tech product that makes people's lives at home more comfortable or more convenient, that's where the layoffs will not be. And a lot of places that have a SaaS product or an educational technology product or just any those are the places that you can count on consistency because people at home are going to need more things to make their lives in lockdown more convenient. So I strongly recommend people to, when you're applying for a job in content at any time before the pandemic or now, it's very important to show that you can create content with many different tones. So when I was a job seeker, I would share pieces of my writing that could show that that I'm funny, that I can write serious things, that I can write journalist as I'm a journalist, I could write detached without my own personal voice, and then also that I can write with a personal voice that is unique. So I would strongly advise someone when they're applying for a job, in addition to making sure that their resume or CV and LinkedIn are airtight, to also have a link tree of your portfolio or a website that serves as your portfolio, just to make sure that you are showing of like your range and scope when you're being considered for a role. You need to make it very clear, you need to be bold, that you have range of what you can create, and that that your mission aligns with the mission of the company that you're applying for.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. In content creation, it's like so important to have a strong portfolio. And also, like, that's a really good point you make about having like showing a range, because I remember back in my journalism days when a lot of times when applying for journalism jobs, it's similar now for content creation jobs, people want to see your work samples, but they don't want to be like overwhelmed with like millions of work samples. They just want to see like your best work. So it's important, I think, to like choose a few really good examples of that kind of like demonstrate your range, like you were saying. So we have a question here from Mar. She says, well, I'm going to put this, let's see, on the screen. So there we go. What are the most important skills you need to develop to land a content job if you're new to the industry or have very little experience in content? I'll let you have the first stab at that, Dan.
Okay, so it's very important to have your specialization in what type of content you make. So like if you're a writer, or writing, but you have to be well-rounded. You need to, a content creator, this is very unfortunate and I don't agree with this, but it is how it is. You need to be a social media strategist, a video producer, an editor. You need to have podcasting ability. You need to be a trend forecaster. Like you need to be well-rounded in a lot of different areas, because these companies would rather have their one millennial do all these functions than have a team. And if there's a new company, they will start by having one community manager, content creator, that they'll want them to do everything. And if you do it well, the ideal thing to happen is you'll be given more resources to eventually be the leader of a team. So that's the natural progression of the careers of a lot of talented communication strategists that I know, that they entered a company, performed well, they were hyper overwhelmed, but then their role evolved to lead and train to train others, because they created the precedent that for the company's overall social media strategy and brand style guide.
Mm-hmm. Voila. Yeah, that's super. That was actually a topic that came up recently in the group about. I mean, there was a job posted that asked for just like a lot of different things, and yeah, I guess increasingly content roles or marketing roles in general are looking for people who kind of be a jack of all trades and do every aspect of marketing to some degree, right? To kind of manage everything. Yeah, and like you're saying, especially when it's a smaller company, more and more things are packed into one role. So being like adaptable, right? Yeah, I guess the question, I mean, in terms of like for people who are just getting into it though, like that have very little experience in content, like how to break in, I guess is maybe part of the question as well.
Sure. Okay. So when I have clients that do want to get in at a company, you have to use LinkedIn in a very strategic way. So already have the portfolio that shows range, but something that I did, and this works really well in Madrid, because Madrid is a small bubble where everyone is 1 degree of separation away from a person who could give them a job. So when I got a job at a big Madrid employer, what I did when I was applying was I scoured their LinkedIn looking for anyone with a North American last name, just to appeal to them and be like, hi, can you be my foot in the door at this company? And it was a perfect storm, because the person, not only we knew many people in common, but we had a shared thing in common in the United States as well. So it helps just to be bold and to ask for favors, especially in a place like Madrid, where the English-speaking community and the long-term foreigners there's a sense of community camaraderie where you can ask for help, but you do have to really go all in, be bold, and you have to have the portfolio and have a clear way you wish to contribute and a way to express that.
Absolutely. And this question is like related, but what advice would you give to recent graduates when searching for a grad job? I guess the question is the first job after graduation. Yeah.
Well, my advice would be to make sure that your CV and LinkedIn are very well curated. Your LinkedIn should be almost like a museum of you and your goals and your achievements thus far academically. If you are junior in your career, you should use words like versatile and malleable when you describe yourself. Malleable is key because the company maybe will want someone who is not set in their ways. They want someone that they can shape to be perfect for the culture and brands they're trying to create. So you have to be enthusiastic and eager. You have to know where the line is to not be too over eager. But my advice would be to just be confident, describe yourself as valuable, as versatile, malleable, and have a clear understanding of what value you would add to the employers you're seeking to work for.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, I think. Yeah, it's like I'm trying to manage all the comments coming from different directions.
Whoa. Cool. I feel like the belle of the ball.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I'm trying to think also to chime in with my advice. What advice would I give to recent graduates? I think I'm going back to having a strong portfolio for me in content creation. I think it's super important, and making contacts. So I mean, I think that goes for like anyone at any stage in their career, but like those opportunities come because of contacts. It's the strategy of just sending out cold applications often doesn't work very well. So, and I guess this kind of ties into this next question from Valentina. How important is it to have actually a different question. How important is it to have a consistent online presence, specifically on social channels, when looking and applying for roles? I guess that's especially relevant if it is a social media related role. How important is it to have your own strong social media presence? What are your thoughts, Dan? I mean, I would say I think it's a big plus to have a very strong presence, but at the same time, it's more important to demonstrate like what you've done for your previous clients or your previous employers. So as long as you have some strong work samples, I don't think it would be held against you if you're not really active on your own profiles, because yeah, that's my thought. I don't know if you agree.
Okay. So one of my mentors in my grad school put this very eloquently, because a lot of people I don't like Twitter, and a lot of people don't like LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. I'll defend LinkedIn forever. But so he says that, first, that LinkedIn is a museum of your achievements in your career and the value you'd add, but it has to be super curated. So I always tell people they should put the banner, because many profiles, when people come to me, they don't have a banner. The banner should be like a high quality stock image that represents what you are. Like if you're a writer, it should be something about writing. If you're anything, just a theme. You need your LinkedIn to have a theme. But so he says about Twitter, but this can be applied to any social media platform. And now I'm trying to learn how to use TikTok, but I'm hitting a lot of walls with it. It's that entering a new social media platform is like arriving late at a dinner party where everyone is already talking, and you need to push your way to the seat at the table and just join a conversation and hope that they accept you. So that always resonated with me, and I tell that to my clients that are very averse to LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the most important social media platform for looking for work, because it's where opportunities are posted, and it's also where you can consolidate all of your professional contacts in one place and keep track of where they work, so you can ask them for favors accordingly. And also it'll tell you if you have something in common. So for all the auxiliares in this group, I feel like there's a strong sense of, in Madrid and Spain in general, the teaching assistants that got out of teaching and into their first role as a person with permission to work, they are all eager to help each other because they had the shared experience of being a teaching assistant before whatever they evolved into. So so social media, your social media presence, it's not like it has to be consistent, but like your Instagram can just be a bunch of cool pictures that show that you're a fun person. And then your LinkedIn should just be a very stoic, clear representation of you as a professional. So basically, if you have a website where your portfolio is placed that links to your Instagram and links to your LinkedIn, a person can just get a very fast, clear look at you and see that you would be a fit for what they are offering. So yeah, and also be careful. Don't put anything bad on your social media presence.
Yeah, and that is a really good point. Like, even though it's because obviously, like, employers are gonna look at your social media before interviewing you. So
I've
it's
done
important.
that before. I've interviewed people. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, that's now the first thing you do is like Google the person's name and see what comes up, and social media profiles are up there. So, yeah, maybe it's the expectation wouldn't be that you have to have this super professional social media presence necessarily, but you do want it to be representative of what you want to present, right? Because that's what people see. Yeah, I totally agree. That is important to like be mindful of what you put on social media. Absolutely. And then I also agree with the point about networking, because that would kind of goes back to the point that we were talking about before, how important it is to like make contacts, and social media is like a really powerful way to do that, especially now with the limitations of like in-person events not happening and things.
LinkedIn is replacing networking in person. I'll say that, like, everyone needs to be on there and connecting with people that they think could be a mutually beneficial like connection. So
yeah, awesome. So I'm going to go to the next question. So this comes from, it's actually from Grayson Steinberg. Yeah, we're using an app that doesn't always show, you have to give it permission to show your little face there. But okay. Grayson, thank you for the question. And the question is, what are some applications you should learn that are fundamental for someone looking for a social media marketing or content creation role? So kind of, I guess, getting to the practical side of like the technology that would be useful to know.
Yeah. Do you want to go first, or should I?
Yeah, sure. I can. I mean, there's a lot. There's like so many tools that are like changing all the time. So I don't think there's like a magic bullet.
Like the calendars, right? The planning tools. Though basically, the planning tools would be the ones that, and also any CRM tool. Basically, for me, all CRM tools are the same, but that's one that every content person has to know, because maybe a company will have its own, but they all function the same way, just to be able to email market.
I would say like there's not like a specific one, but like that definitely having previous experience, like using tools like, marketing automation tools, there's obviously like tons of tools that we use, and every company has their own like combination of which ones they use. So I don't think it matters so much the exact tool, but the fact that you have experience maybe with social media management tools, with newsletter making tools, and all that.
InDesign, back of the thing of being a jack of all trades, my Achilles heel is that I'm not a good designer. So I've been tasked with making basic things in InDesign in past jobs, and I struggle with that. So I would say, again, back to the thing at the beginning, to be super well-rounded. So anything of editing videos, editing text, and then also being familiar with tools that make your job easier that you don't necessarily tell the employer that you're using. Like Grammarly Premium is your friend. Also, for me, what's the other one called? Calendly. A friend introduced me to Calendly for scheduling. This is more if you're an entrepreneur or like working freelance, but that saved me at least like 3 hours per week of just calculating time differences and corresponding with the clients to book the appointments. So you just be super on top of what new tools are arising to be able to gain enough knowledge in them to use them either openly or silently.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, that is a really good point. I'd say like the fundamental like technical skills that are really useful for content creation and social media marketing are like design and then also like web design, and working with WordPress or other content management systems. Having experience with that is super valuable. And specifically on design, now it's becoming like the kind of standard is Canva. So that's having previous Canva experience. I mean, practically anyone doing social media on a massive scale is using Canva or a similar tool. So saying that you have experience with that, or but more important is the portfolio, having examples of things you've produced. But yeah, cool. Well, let's see. So I see Valentina's putting some links to all the tools we're mentioning in the comments. So thanks for that, Valentina. Okay, so we have another question from Mary. She says, what are some top reasons a candidate would get rejected other than not being qualified? What might rule people out?
Okay, so one thing that we have to be hyper conscious of is that employers are people, and their bias, like they have biases. So I've seen some candidates get rejected for very silly reasons, and I've heard stories, but like it could just be a matter of rubbing the employer the wrong way, or like something about your vibe which can't be quantified, right? So it's if a person gets rejected from a job and they identify as being a perfect fit for it, they don't have to tell you why they rejected you, and they also don't have to give you feedback. So it could be there's a wealth of reasons outside of competence. It could be that I don't even know how to get into this, but the connection, like the energy, like in Spain, I hate to say it, but employers, a huge percentage of why they would hire you or not is if they want to have a beer with you. When I got hired at one big employer in Madrid, one of the reasons I was hired, besides the portfolio and everything else, was just that I was likable and I made a good impression and I had someone speak for me. So maybe there was someone better than me, because at that point in my career I was very junior, but having a positive energy and looking them in the eyes and all that, like the body language thing, and so it could be anything. Also, nepotism is a big factor. You could maybe you're not the cousin or son-in-law of the right person. So that is an obstacle that's invisible, that you just won't know that it's there until you just will literally never know. So
yeah, absolutely. Some things are just there's nothing you can do about it and you have to move on. Right. Okay, so we got another question here from Liliana. She says, how challenging was it for those who are auxiliaries to transition? And for those who are not in Spain, you might not know, but the auxiliary program is a program to teach English in Spain. And I mean, it brings thousands of English speakers to Spain.
It's the gateway drug.
Yeah, it's what brings a lot of English speakers to Spain, and many people afterwards look for want to transition out of that. So and I know we have a lot of former auxiliaries or current auxiliaries in the group. So so a question for all of them. Yeah, I mean, I guess I know, Dan, you've worked with auxiliaries and helping them transition. So maybe you have some examples or feedback on how hard has it been for people to make that transition?
Okay, so another less invisible obstacle is that a North American or someone who's not European has the obstacle where they really need to prove the value that they would add, because it's a lot of paperwork to hire someone who is not a citizen of a European country. But however, as daunting as that might seem, it happens. And I've had many non-European clients get hired in Spain or other European countries by just proving that they are better than anyone else that is being considered for the role. So yes, it's extremely challenging, but if you make a very compelling application and show yourself as good at what you do, or if you enter as an intern and then get hired by the company you're interning at, that's one way. Because if you have the knowledge of the inner workings of the organization as an intern, then it's easier to justify hiring you, because you would have that because they need to prove that you have something that the Europeans you're competing with don't have, to justify doing the paperwork to make you a resident able to work. So the organizational knowledge that would come from being an intern would be what differentiates you between the people you're competing with who never worked or interned within the same company. So I would say, yes, it's very difficult, but I've seen people overcome this obstacle enough that I know that it's not like a fleeting occurrence. It does happen. And Shaheen, you've hired non-Europeans, so maybe you can talk about this.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if the job requires like language skills, or I mean, obviously being non-Europe, it might be easier, I guess, to get the job than otherwise, because I mean, sometimes if you need American English for the role, or for example, then I mean, you have no choice but to hire an American. In general, I mean, there's exceptions of people who spend a lot of time in the U.S. and obviously someone who already has the work permission has an advantage. But there are times, yeah, when the best candidate is a non-EU person and you have to go through the process. But I would say it definitely, employers are like more willing to do it if they have like some kind of personal connection with you. So one thing I always say, like to people, and it's come up in the group many times in the past, is like, do not mention it if you don't have work permission. Don't mention it at the early stage. Like, get the first interview first. And, you know, once you've built a rapport with the person and they like you, then mention it. Because, I mean, you need to bring it up at some point. You don't want to waste their time, but like, don't bring it up too early, because they're going to rule you out without even like giving you the chance to show who you are and make a case for why they should hire you, you know?
Yes. But that's when it really matters to be not only extremely competent, but to show loyalty, because they don't want to think that they're just a stepping stone that will give you the European access to other opportunities. So there is a huge component of, that's one rare case where I'll say you have to be loyal to the company, and it's bad for your reputation if you use them as a stepping stone.
Yeah. I would say Spain, we do have also, actually, I run another Facebook group called Spain Guru that's all about residency stuff. So for anybody who's like not already in that group, definitely go there, because there's like tons of discussion on this topic. But the cool thing in Spain is that there are definitely some avenues for getting a work permit. I think it's one of the easier countries, especially if you've already been in Spain for a while on another type of visa. So yeah, definitely check out spainguru.es and the Spain Guru Facebook group if you have, you know, questions about residency things related to Spain. Okay, well, going down to we have a bunch more questions, so let's take this question. Yeah, this question from Jess: how can interns really maximize the value of their internship experience on their LinkedIn and their CV? How to play up an internship?
Well, I mean, like any job, with action verbs, with percentages of the value that you've added, by definitely getting the mentor figure to recommend you. Something that's really important is to collect the recommendations on LinkedIn from people that you've worked alongside, because that's instead of saying references available on request on your CV. So you need to make sure that you make a good enough impression that even if they don't hire you, that they speak for you. And you also want to, towards the end of the internship, ask the mentor for feedback or for help. And if they're not going to hire you, to at least help you with your next opportunity. But on your CV and LinkedIn profile, write about it like it's any job. Start with an action verb, talk about the percentages of the, like when possible, the value that you added, but the budgets you've worked with, and just describe the responsibilities as eloquently as you can, as accurately as you can without embellishing. But when I was an intern, I had a really transformative internship, and it was one of my most positive career experiences. I had a really good mentor figure who was a no-nonsense senior editor, and she didn't coddle any of her mentees. She was very straight with us. So feedback from her was earned, and it felt more real. There was no fluff. She did something I really respected. She would stand during meetings, and she had a workstation that was elevated so she could stand while she worked, and I just really liked that. But she understood that I wanted to find a job either within the organization or outside of it. So I got ahead on work, and she actually just let me use time on the internship for finding other opportunities. And she also helped me get meetings within other departments of the organization when hers didn't have the budget to hire me. And she put a good word for me all over the place. And because she had a great reputation, nobody thought it was just her feeling like she had to, but she was doing it because she wanted to, because she was a serious and respected person. So it helped a lot.
Yeah. And actually, going back to Jess's previous question was like, how can you get that first job after graduation? My answer to that question would be do internships, because having internships on your CV, showing that you have like real world experience during your studies, like really sets you ahead of everyone else when you graduate. And the more experience you can get, the better. Yeah.
Also, the competitor, like if you if you intern at a place, the competitor of that place will want to hire you for your organizational knowledge. So you should consider that as well, that something that we have to do as millennials is bounce around between competing companies so we can bring the knowledge from each to the other. And that's the value that we would bring, the knowledge of the organizational structure of a competitor. So
definitely. Yeah. Okay, we have more questions. Question from Liliana. Maybe Liliana, you could clarify this one because it says, if my professional background has no relation to the education field, should I post it on my resume? I mean, I guess it depends what your objective is and what field you're what field you're targeting. So if you want to like clarify that question a bit and ask again, we can answer it. Let's go to the next question. From Jacqui. So on the portfolio, how would you recommend show? You know each other? Hi, Jacqui. Cool. Welcome. So how would you recommend you show your previous work if the majority has been ghostwriting?
You can't. If it's for someone else and they're paying you for the discretion, you can't. That's a tricky one. I always ask the clients when I'm working with them to be to be clear with whoever their clients or past employers are, if they're allowed to use the content or not. So, I mean, in my own case, I ghost wrote someone's entire memoir, and I can never take credit for that. The credit is the money. So, like it's unfortunate, but you can't.
I mean, I think it depends on the particular project, but of course you would have to get permission from the person you're ghostwriting for. Like in some cases, if it's a corporate blog and you're writing in the name of the CEO, they might be okay with it. Like it's probably obvious that the CEO is not writing all their own articles, but yeah, you would need to get permission. So
and definitely get the permission in writing, because that I don't know. We're definitely in projects negotiating the ability to take credit or not, because something that could happen is you could be on a team, like on a team that wins an award for a project, but if the nuance of the agreement is that you're a consultant or a freelancer, you might not be able to say you got the award. So I don't know, it's tricky, but yeah, good question, but yeah.
But yeah, I guess on your CV you can work that in. Obviously, you wouldn't be able maybe to share the exact content, but like mention it right on your CV in some way.
Yeah, you can say as a point on the CV, ghost wrote XYZ in the industries that you wrote for, and that's one of the ways to show your tones. And if you say that it was ghostwriting, I mean, whoever they'll have to take your word for it that you did what you say you did. But you can still mention what industries the people and what types of people they were. Like, yeah.
How important they are, maybe. Yeah, it's I don't know, a top executive in whatever industry or something like that. Cool. So let's see, go to the next question. What advice would you give to someone who has years of experience in a different field and now wants to transition to the content industry for the first time? You take that one.
Well, because content can be anything, if you've made anything in the role, you can use it in your applications. My advice would be, though, to write about whatever you've done in the past, just to get comfortable writing, get comfortable using social media tools to express yourself, and try to go on a soul searching journey where you try to figure out what type of content you want to create, so you can have a clear vision of what projects you want to work on, and then apply to work in places that match your values and take it from there. Basically just reflect on what type of content you want to create and take from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can't figure out who asked the question, but thank you for the question. I have trouble seeing like all the comments on the Facebook thingy because they keep moving. But anyway, yeah, let's go to the next question. Let's see. Okay, yeah, we've got some, and thanks to everybody who's like chiming in with their answers as well. We've had some really good like feedback in the group, like on the comments as well. So yeah, okay, so let's see. The next question is, how likely is it to land an internship in the field when you're 30 plus, and what paths would you recommend for taking to look for internships when you're not part of an undergraduate or graduate program?
Mm.
I guess this is, a common situation for people who maybe are moving abroad and trying to like restart their career in a new place and want to or get into a new field. Maybe if you don't have previous experience in that field, like, is it possible to do? Because earlier we were talking about internships being a great way to get in, but yeah, if you're already in your 30s, later in your
Well, how would they know how old you are when you apply? You don't have to tell them how old you are. So you can just loosely word your experiences and your timeline in a way that doesn't give away your age if you're worried about age discrimination. So, I mean, like something that I'll do. I have some clients who are self-conscious about their age. So I just won't put the graduation date of their university. I'll just say that they have the degree that they have, and voila, like there's no way to know, especially now because less and less European employers want to see a picture of you on your CV. I mean, they'll find out what you look like from your LinkedIn, but it's easier to hide the qualities that you might get discriminated for because companies have to be more modern and less discriminatory. So they'll never know how old you are unless you give it away by accident. Mm-hmm. That's my response.
There is one issue, though, is that a lot of companies do require some kind of collaboration agreement with the university. So in that case, basically an option is to enroll in some kind of course to be able, that would, in some kind of institution that would be willing to make you the internship agreement. Yeah, and then that is a good way to just kind of like refresh your skills and show interest in the new field that you want to go into. Of course, that's somewhat of an investment, but I know in Europe there's some very affordable programs, so that might be an option.
Yeah.
And then also an alternative also is freelancing. I mean, one way to get your foot in the door is, and I know there's definitely been like a lot of debate on this in the group in the past, but it's essentially like an internship. If you have like no experience and you do a freelance job at a low rate, I mean, that's a way to get that initial foot in the door. Obviously don't keep your rates low, but but that is like one way. On like freelancer platforms, there's a lot of things like people looking for help on something, and we'll give preference to those that offer the lower rate. So it's not hard to like get those kinds of opportunities and to have something for your portfolio, just have like that first thing. So I don't know. You disagree or agree on that, Dan?
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, working on projects and just being visible, because a lot of people have a creative thing that they're involved in, and it sparks joy. They don't view it as a professional thing to put on their resume or LinkedIn. So a lot of people do. I don't know. Like, let's say you have a friend who is a performer of some sort. You could help them with their own social media presence or recording them as they perform. Something I'm very big on, this maybe goes a little bit too off track, is trading services with other people who can help you. Like a woman in the group named Vesta, like I help her with things and she made my website. A designer named Diego, he made my logo. He made my animation that I just recently shared to the group, and I help him with his job seeking endeavors. Like, if you form these partnerships, you can build a brand around your name. Like, nobody would be able to, like, I was junior in my career until suddenly I built this reputation around myself as the resume writer. So there's a lot of smoke and mirrors of like building a brand, but there's no one will come in with a magic wand and say one day this is your value in the professional sphere. Okay, you can push the limits of what your costs are or what your reputation is just based on what you build around your name. So yeah, the freelancing is an alternative. You can skip multiple layers. Like now moving forward, I won't accept a conventional job unless it's senior at the highest level because I've outshined my past self as a conventional worker. So yeah, you can build whatever you want around your name and create your professional identity and status that way.
Yeah, and I should say it doesn't have to be taking low, like crappy jobs on Upwork. Like there are other ways you can get that first first experience. Maybe it's working for a nonprofit or doing something that, or a personal project, something that you're passionate about, but just anything that like allows you to build your portfolio and get that experience, because you need some kind of experience on your resume to be able to get that your foot in the door for a full-time position.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's see. Next question. We got a lot of comments, so great that the conversation that's happening in the comments, loving it. So let's see, we have a question here, which is, what are some of the coolest opportunities, developments you guys are seeing come up in the educational technology space?
Okay.
That's a very specific industry question, but maybe Dan, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. Okay, so we're in this game of chicken where the schools all over the world are staying open or not, right? Based on their COVID numbers. But I guarantee if there's not a vaccine in the next few months, there's going to be one company, I don't know what it is, that will be the Netflix of education, right? So I'm sure there are multiple ed tech companies that are already competing to have the most sound infrastructure for schools and universities all over the world to do everything remotely. So that is happening at the same accelerated rate as the search for the vaccine. Because also this concept of remote learning is going to continue after the virus, because there's going to be a culture where if you're sick, you just don't go to class anymore, even when there's a vaccine for the coronavirus. So this need for everything to be remote is going to continue for the rest of our lives and careers. So whichever company becomes the Netflix of education, that they will blow up and be, I'll want to invest in them as soon as they go public. But like they, but for an example is, so I worked at IE Business School in 2016, 2017, 2018, and they had just 2017 and 2018 mental timeline. But they have this thing called the WOW Room that they use for blended learning, and they were using it before the coronavirus. It's like a supercomputer where the professor stands in a room where the students appear on monitors, and it's a unique user experience for the professor and for the students, because it's just a hyper cutting edge like tool that only IE in Madrid and Harvard have. Those are the only two WOW rooms that exist. So that in its time was extremely cutting edge. I had to make a lot of content about it while I worked for them. It looks like the Bat computer. But so things like that. And there's a company in Madrid called Lingo Kids that has hired people that I know. There's another one called Global Alumni that has hired people. So Madrid has these ed tech companies, and they do need content creators, but then a common path for the auxiliares when they graduate onto their first corporate job is to be a curriculum designer, to actually create the script that the teacher gives in the class that gets recorded on video. So often the teacher is an actor, like what's his name? Like the dude from Blue's Clues. So basically this edutainment ed tech thing, someone has to make a script that's super interactive that then the actor, it's not a teacher, it's an actor on the camera. So anyone involved in those productions, there's a lot of room to just make content, because the whole thing is a piece of content from every stage until the person consumes it as content. So I would just say look for companies that are trying to recreate what VipKid, the Chinese company, has created, which is a platform for people to learn in a new way. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with everything you said. We're definitely seeing in my agency, like our education clients are having like a lot of work, even though they're facing challenges like every industry right now, but there's a lot of work in terms of content, because there's a lot to do to adapt. People who have more traditional education models are adapting to online, and there's so much content that needs to be created for that, and then also more promotion around the switch to online learning. But and then also just in terms, like exactly what Dan was saying, like there's so many new ed tech companies that are, there's just like a lot of opportunity, a lot of growth happening in that industry. So there's tons of opportunities for content creators and marketers. And I should say, we've actually had several interviews with people in that industry on the podcast. And I totally recommend like if anyone has like interest in any particular industries, to like check out some of the interviews with people working in those industries, because they'll give you a lot of insight. Like in these interviews, we like ask them a lot about their day-to-day in the job and what it entails and how their team works and everything. So it'll give you a lot of insight into how these different companies work, and an insight to if you want to get a job in any of those places. And a lot of the people that we've interviewed are also members of the Facebook group. So it's a way to like reach out to them directly if you're interested in working with them. So cool. So we've got more questions. Speaking of online learning and like professional development, we've got this question. Apart from LinkedIn Learning, I think this is from Grayson. In terms of learning about new skills technologies, what platforms, e.g. MOOCs, like what's that, massive online courses or whatever, would you most recommend for continued development?
That's a good question.
I mean, I'm a big fan of Udemy, for example. I think it's like really accessible and affordable, like, and you can find like training on all kinds of different things there. But there's so many platforms now. So I don't know. I mean, Coursera, like there's tons, but we actually did an article on the Content Mix blog a while back on like to code or not to code. Is it worth to learn programming if you're a writer? And there was really some interesting analysis there and some some great resources for courses that are available online for learning coding if you decide to go that route. But there's some good arguments in the article for why it is worth at least learning some basics of coding. So it's interesting. But I don't know. Dan, any other thoughts on that?
No, my grad school gave all the students access to lynda.com, and I think LinkedIn Learning owns Lynda, or they have some sort of relationship where the courses are now the same. So that's my only. Besides, when I worked at IE, I got to take the classes that I was selling for free to understand them. But my scope with online classes is, it's limited, so I can't really answer this. Yeah. So lynda.com and LinkedIn, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so speaking of LinkedIn Learning, Mary was asking if we recommend any courses. I personally have not taken any courses on LinkedIn Learning. Maybe others in the group, if you have advice, please post in the comments. I don't know, Dan, if you've done any courses. If not,
yeah, I mean, for basic things like the skills we were describing, you can learn. You don't need a person to teach you. Like you can learn it from an online class. The CRM, so I learned MailChimp from a lynda.com class. That's the CRM tool that I use. So a course on MailChimp, a course on InDesign, to get the skills, you don't need an actual teacher in the room like overseeing you. Those are the types, like the pragmatic skills to become well-rounded. Those are the ones that I would advise people to learn on the learning platforms.
Yeah, awesome. Question here. I'm trying to transition to self-employed to work remotely, but I don't want to pay the high fees in Spain. Is Portugal a better option?
It depends on what you're doing. I mean, Portugal, yes, like I have found it's a lot easier. These ladies set me up as a freelancer here recently. I can't really speak to the amount of taxes because I have someone help me with. But Portugal, the quality of life, I found it higher. It's less expensive than Spain. For the same amounts that I paid to have roommates in Madrid, admittedly in the downtown of Madrid, I live in a small house with a guest bedroom for the same cost in Porto. So, and also I lived in Paris, which is astronomically higher than both Madrid and Porto. So I became a 5-year resident last week. So I do intend on writing this out in Porto. I'm just really happy here. But yeah, don't expect, there's less actual opportunity here, which is why it's less expensive. So if you're trying to get a job, like a normal job here, I wouldn't recommend it at all because the salaries are very low. They make it a very appealing place for remote workers. A lot of my friends are freelancers and remote workers. And yeah, I think it's a good place if you are already established in what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, very good point. Okay, so we got let's see, more questions here. We got some back and forth going on in the comments. Well, yeah, let's see. Actually, we don't have a lot more questions. So if anyone has any final things, I see more discussion happening than questions, so which is great. But yeah, some discussion going on about HubSpot and free online certifications, things like that, different topics on continued education. So definitely HubSpot Academy. Cool. Well, yeah. So, I guess Dan, any like final thoughts or final like advice for everyone?
Yeah, I mean, definitely it doesn't happen overnight. There's a lot of, oh yeah, all right. My main advice: do not just mass send out one resume. The reason why my resumes work with the clients is that I show them which literally 2 lines to change every time they send it to a different employer. Okay, so a lot of resumes that I see before I work with the people do not have the summary section, which is where you say what you are, you say in your own words like who you are, and then you say seeking the next professional challenge in a role that this is an equation, okay, and you tailor it to every company you're applying for. So I write a generic line for every client, and then if they want to consult with me more, I tailor it for them every time if they need me to. But you basically put the mission of the company in your own words, the description of the role in your own words, in the line of seeking the next professional challenge. And then the headline also above the summary is what you are. So for me, I say communication strategist specializing in whatever the person's specialization is. You change that headline, you change the seeking line at the end of the description of yourself, just to show them that you understand who they are, you understand what your place would be for them. And so an example I'll give you is that, so recently I've had clients get hired at the UN, World Food Program, Amazon, and Apple. So the Amazon woman is based in Madrid, and her line in the resume was seeking the next professional challenge at a tech company whose services enrich the lives of the consumer. So it also, she said, in a customer service role, because she was had a career in customer service, and she was applying for a leadership customer service position. Mm-hmm. So the seeking the next professional challenge equation is how you make the resume specific for each role so that it doesn't ever feel like you are spam that belongs like immediately in the bin. Okay, so a lot of resumes I see, it starts at experience and it doesn't have like an explanation. Like the cover letter is a separate explanation, but the summary and concise words is how you can grip them. That's what I add to these resumes that gives the candidate a competitive advantage, because it's a form of expression, but still without ever saying I or my. You have to like put it, there's in impersonal words, but showing that your mission is their mission and that you know where your role with them would be. That's my advice. Be very, make sure that you tailor the resumes in that exact way.
Yeah, that is a really good point. Like I definitely see that as a employer when I'm going through resumes, if it has to be clear that this person is really interested in this role, and I don't know, I try to see beyond that sometimes, because sometimes it is a silly thing, but if it's not super clear, like this person is motivated for this role in particular, it's really easy to just toss their resume aside. So yeah, it's really important and a very good point.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. So well, we're about coming to the end of the time. If we don't have any, I think we're done answering all the questions. If people have more questions, feel free to post in the group. Dan is in the group, and Dan and I can answer them, at any time in writing. And and Valentina just shared Dan's website, danielcatalan.com. So if you're interested in his services, maybe Dan, you could just recap real quick, what your services are, in case you have some potential clients here in the group.
Yeah. So basically, when I meet the clients, it's in a call like this. What differentiates me from other resume writers is that I meet the client in a Zoom where I share my screen with them. I open my tool that makes the resumes and I interview them, and section by section write a strong resume of every client. I study their LinkedIn and I study their resume before I meet with them. I study their goals and I bring to life the resume in front of them. The same fashion, I write the cover letters for them. But the cover letters I can write specific for whatever job they're applying for, or vague so they can fill in the blanks of the template of the cover letter every time they apply for a job in the future. I also teach courses on how to use LinkedIn as a research tool and how to curate your LinkedIn to be the best version of yourself professionally. I also I'm offering a new service, which is after a client comes to me for the original resume, cover letter, and LinkedIn, for a much lower fee, I will meet them every week and tailor the cover letters and resumes to the individual jobs of their entire life cycle of searching for work. I also want to just let everyone know the people I worked with in 2019, I want to reconnect with all of them to give them pro bono, like a fresh coat of paint and an update, because I've gotten a lot better at this, especially since the lockdown, because this job is basically my life because I have nothing else going on. So I want to go back in and just make sure that the people I worked with at the beginning of my career within this profession have the same quality of resume as the people I've worked with since. So so those are my services. There's a video that explains it in more depth on my website, and anyone who wants to reach out to me directly, I'm happy to. So
excellent. Great. Thanks, Dan. And Valentina also just shared the Vera Content job opportunities page. So anyone interested in collaborating with us, definitely submit your application. We're always looking for great talent in content creation talent in European languages. So we'll wrap it up. So thanks so much, Dan, for taking the time to join us on this live Q&A. It was great having you.
Of course, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
And thanks everybody for listening in. So for more perspectives on the content marketing industry in Europe, make sure to tune into the daily podcast that I mentioned before with content experts across Europe. We interview every weekday. And like I said, it's a great resource to learn more about content creation roles at different companies and learn about potential job opportunities. Also, make sure to join our next virtual networking session on November 11th. And this is going to be a speed networking kind of thing where you get matched up with other people, and it's really fun, and you get a few minutes to talk to a whole bunch of different people. It's a great way to network. When we can't meet in person, you can meet people online, and it kind of mimics a real life networking event. So definitely join us there. And that's all. Thanks again so much for everyone, to everybody for your awesome questions. And thank you, Dan, again for sharing your insights and advice.
Of course. Thank you. I'll see you all soon.
Yes. See you all in the Facebook group. We'll continue the conversation there. All right. Bye, everybody. Bye.
Ciao.